All right, what we have here is one of the top Muslim apologists in the Philippines, Rashid Indasan, and he is received and or promoting the gospel of Barnabas. Now this is absurd because the gospel of Barnabas is clearly known to be a forgery. And so for his methodology to use this is either ignorant or dishonest. Either way puts him in between a rock and a hard place. Now, who is Barnabas? Barnabas, he's found in Acts 13, went on a missionary journey with Paul. And Muslims want the gospel of Barnabas to be true because it tries to align itself more closely with what the Quran believes rather than with the canonical gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So, within the gospel of Barnabas, you have someone else dies in the place of Jesus, and Jesus didn't really die. And you have something akin to, or actual, where Ishmael is really the Lord's descendant and not so much Isaac. And of course, Gabriel is spoken of more or a lot in the Gospel of Barnabas relative to the other Gospels, where he's only seen just a little bit in a couple Gospels. And in the Quran, we know, and according to Islamic tradition, that between Allah and Muhammad, Gabriel gives that revelation to Muhammad. So, and several other things that lines itself up with the Quran. But this is interesting because if Muslims have to desperately go to a forgery, a 14th century forgery, then they have desperate apologetic and polemical points. Because if someone's going to use polemics, it shouldn't be based on lies, right? That's just obvious. Also in the Gospel of Barnabas, supposedly Jesus mentions Muhammad by name. It says, I'm just going to read here, Adam, having sprung up upon his feet, saw in the air a writing that shone like the sun, which said, this is the one God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. So here you have this supposedly 500 plus year foreshadowing of Muhammad. But is the Gospel of Barnabas 2,000 years old? Did it come 500 years plus before the Quran? Well, obviously it did not. Don't confuse the Epistle of Barnabas, which preceded the Quran, with the Gospel of Barnabas. The Gospel of Barnabas is came about in the 14th century. It's an Italian manuscript, and it's clearly a forgery. Almost every scholar out there believes it's a forgery. There is a 5th century text that does mention the Gospel of Barnabas, but there's no extant manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas. So if this is a 1st century text, then you would expect to find a couple extant manuscripts, 1 or 2 extant manuscripts that pre-exist Islam, or at the very least a couple hundred years after the rise of Islam. We don't even have an 8th or 9th century Gospel of Barnabas manuscript. So that is a very, very big problem, even according to Muslim apologists, but not for Rashid. Rashid doesn't listen to other Muslim apologists, and I'm going to bring up a short video on it. But let me just give you 2 quick examples of problems in the Gospel of Barnabas, and there are plenty more, but 2 will suffice for now. So in the Gospel of Barnabas, there's confusion over the terms Christ and Messiah. It says that Jesus is not the Messiah, but still refers to him as Christ in the Gospel of Barnabas. Well, that's a contradiction because Mashiach, or the Messiah, and Christ in Greek have the same meaning, the anointed one. So HaMashiach, translated into Greek, is Christ. So obviously the person who wrote the Gospel of Barnabas did not know this. And obviously Barnabas of the 1st century did know that. Almost every single Christian would have known that in the 1st century. So that's just complete ignorance. But if you have someone that's not a Christian, or even a Muslim, forging this in the 14th or 15th century, maybe they're ignorant. They don't know the difference. So that's a point there. Now, obviously, that won't even align with the Quran, because even in the Quran, the Quran does say that Jesus is the Messiah. So that's interesting. There's another anachronism in the Gospel of Barnabas. So unless the real Barnabas made a prophecy 500 years later about how wine would be restored, this historical anachronism would show that it was not written in the first century. And that is, in the Gospel of Barnabas, the cask of wood being filled with wine, that's a medieval method of storing wine. Compared to Jesus' day, people stored wine in wineskins. So there's a big difference there. And these are just two blunders, errors within the Gospel of Barnabas. We're going to make another video another time of like maybe 25 errors in the Gospel of Barnabas, why this thing is a forgery. But doing the bare minimal of research would show any Christian, any Muslim, any time, any place in the 21st century that this is a forgery, should not be used. And yet Muslims trying to do dawah based on ignorance or lies are trying to promote the Gospel of Barnabas. They should be ashamed. If Rashid is going to see himself remotely as an authentic scholar, he should not believe or promote the Gospel of Barnabas. It's absolutely shameful. And to confirm my point, at least Shabir Ali is being honest, and I'm going to play his video here.
Use it as an authentic account because the way in which Muslims authenticate matters is by having a chain of authorities to relate a historical event. And the chain of authorities in the case of the Gospel of Barnabas is missing because for many hundreds of years, this gospel was not seen anywhere and then suddenly turned up in the Middle Ages. So because of that break in continuity, we can only know that there used to be a Gospel of Barnabas at one time, which became banned, and then it was missing for many hundreds of years, and then suddenly a copy turns up somewhere. Is this a real copy of the original Gospel of Barnabas, or is this something new that somebody else composed in the name of Barnabas, one of the early Christians? One cannot say for sure, and because of this, I hesitate to use it as an authentic account of the life of Jesus, on whom be peace.
Now, he's very tentative and pretty much does not use the Gospel of Barnabas as legit, although he seems, the way he plays it up, he seems to be like, oh, we don't know whether it's authentic or not. But even that way of playing it, whether it's authentic or not, is disingenuous, because almost every scholar out there believes clearly that it's not. And there's many other ways to know clearly that it's not. But at least Shabir Ali is 2 steps above Rashid Indasan and not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole, because it will discredit Shabir Ali as a scholar if he does use it, because he knows it's a forgery. He knows he'll be called out on it. But of course, Rashid, he's in the Philippines. He's not held to high academic standards like Shabir Ali would be in the West. And so that's what Rashid tries to get away with. But if you're going to be honest, you can't use that. And so I hope whatever debate Rashid has next lined up in the menu, he will never use the Gospel of Barnabas as supposedly legitimate.